Minimalist, Frugalist and Silent Stranger are all achievements in Resident Evil 4 Remake that, according to Steam, rank as some of the rarest and most difficult that the game has to offer. With Minimalist restricting you to using only pistols and knives, Frugalist banning health items and the partaking of herbal refreshment, and Silent Stranger making us effectively excommunicado from the merchant's goods and services, each of these achievements completely changed the way you played through the game. And conveniently, I needed all three of these to finally 100% the remake. So with it being long overdue, I decided that today I'd be getting all three of these final coveted achievements at the same time. The Trifecta Challenge was a video game waterboarding technique that would require us to get through all three of these remaining achievements in a single playthrough, alongside Peerless Agent, which you get for beating the game on Professional. I'm just including it here as Quadfecta, just sounds kind of lame. Now, individually, each of these achievements weren't overly taxing, but combining them all together alongside the game's hardest difficulty was the kind of thing that leads to the narrator keyboard being opened by force.
Narrator dialogue. Okay.
Oh, here we go again. As I dropped off in the village to enjoy the most celebrated of Christian pastimes, the combination of these achievements would be felt immediately and consistently. The Trifecta, as it so happens, was the perfect self-sustaining cycle of pain. The reality of our situation was that for the next 16 chapters out of the 28 weapons available to us, we now had access to only 3 of them. And with us cut off from the merchant's upgrades, the stats for those 3 weapons would remain the same as they were when we found them. The combat knife had a warranty of only 4 necks until it was out of action forever, and with Frugalist providing the cherry on top of this cake made out of white dog shit, we'd be forced to partake in what was a very loosely termed no damage run. I always think about this comment when I write these, it's like post-nut clarity for challenge runs. Regardless, within 3 resets we'd managed to survive until the bingo rapture and had successfully backflipped our way through to the fishing village, a beautifully serene location that made you feel like you were at one with nature. Until we're forced to taste these random hobos' fingers with our eyes. Having not saved, thinking who dies in the fishing village in 2024, me and my hubris were non-consensually returned back to the windmill. But I couldn't escape this unshakable feeling that there was more bullshit on the immediate horizon. Oh wait, yeah, no, there is. It was very clear that the severity of this challenge meant that there was no room for our usual negligent playstyle, so heading back to the fishing village on attempt 5 with slightly more love and care applied to our very delicate amount of health, a second helping of fish fingers were avoided as we belly flopped our way into chapter 2. Freshly fertilised deadbeat dad Mendez was nowhere to be seen, but there was one person who was keen to speak with us. Now, I wondered for a moment how strict the Silent Stranger achievement actually was. Would eye contact fail this? Could I accidentally say something near him that could be construed as social interaction? Well, just to be sure that there were no muddied waters, our hooded friend was given the silent treatment, which in itself brought its own set of problems. Concerned that we'd created the remake's first stalker enemy, one reprieve was that having played the Berserker mod for the past 6 months, the vanilla game felt so nice. Dynamite Valley felt like it was almost empty, and our tried and tested strategies were now back in working order. Sure, we still had the odd forced conversion from solid to liquid, but that's just what Dynamite Valley was all about. Just a couple of dudes with explosives, living in the moment. With Eagle Crank eventually collected, we're able to open the path up to the Playboy Mansion, where we can finally get back to what had become one of my favourite pastimes.
But I'll be.
The toilet door wouldn't hold him forever, so with the merchant left inhaling his own excrement, we collect the key for the church just before Mendez arrived to check on the progress of his freshly incubating child. With the church located, our sins for now would remain unatoned as we parry, kick and shoot our way through the cliffside to begin work on clearing the swamp. With the brute ambushed as soon as he walked around this corner, the rest of the swamp had no answer to how quickly we could run through to the fuel, and with a nice hot petrol-infused bath, we had a rare opportunity to relax as we sailed off across to the other side of the lake. With sunlight quickly becoming a commodity that we couldn't afford, it was time to arrive back on dry land, before immediately heading back out onto wet water to begin our collection of the stone heads.
Not bad.
Despite having plenty of areas to explore, it was the shipwreck in the middle of the lake that was of the most interest to me. On here rested probably the most important item of the run, some say even more so than having any shred of self-respect. The Red 9, rather than being exclusively purchasable via the Merchant's Battle Pass, was actually available here for free, which was probably still about 2 times more expensive than it should have been. To many of us, the Red 9 was like Marmite. It tasted like shit, and I hated it. Its base stats were absolutely criminal. Its bloom was as wide as a Regenerador's reversing dump truck, and combined with Leon's hands being as steady as a vibrator, it made it truly one of the worst experiences of my life to use. But even so, with half a point more power than the standard SG, the additional damage offered by the Red 9, whilst seemingly minimal, had the potential to save ammo and this challenge more than once, including with our first boss fight. Whilst the prospect of having your head crushed between Spanish Popeye's synthol-infused thighs might have sounded like a good time to some, this wasn't GoldenEye, and El Gigante wasn't Famke Janssen. I'd never quite realised just how annoying this fight was without being able to take damage, but with the newly acquired Red 9, it was time for it to shine, and oh boy, did it not. The bloom had gotten to the point of ridiculousness that I was convinced that if we pointed the Red 9 into the earth and shot, there was still a percentage chance that we'd miss the entire planet altogether. Wondering if we should have just waited for the Red 10 to release, the big guy was simply absorbing what bullets we did hit like they were nothing, and the extended warranty his attacks came with seemed to be outpacing our apparent skill level. Whilst it had taken 19 times of us being turned into a Cornetto, we were now sufficiently warmed up. With strong combos hit into his gigante spot, the arrival of the good boy provided a welcome distraction from being hammered into the floor, and with the local homeless shelter providing sufficient cover in the nail-biting final moments of this fight, it was finally done. The run up to the church was a sobering one, both in-game and IRL, where it began to dawn on me that if it took this much effort to beat just one nappy-wearing man-child, then it wasn't looking good for the rest of the game. Anyways, forgetting my future woes as they became overwritten by my present woes, I was very quick to make my discontent of Ashley's presence here known. Her initial performance of getting out of the church was distinctly disappointing, and as always, she couldn't be trusted to be left to her own devices.
Let's make our first time doing business a memorable one.
Heading back into the town centre, it was clear to Bravo 6 that it was getting pretty fucking dark out here, but even as lightning streaked across the sky and the darkness came to reclaim the village, these conditions presented the perfect opportunity for someone to go unnoticed. Stealth, when available, offered us more than just enhancements to our sex appeal and the ability to be scanned at self-service checkouts.
Unexpected item in bagging.
Remaining undetected where we could saved us valuable ammo, health, Ashley, and maintained an overall more calmer vibe to what could be potentially disruptive areas, such as the town centre. Somehow, with our head reflecting moonlight like we were a lighthouse, we remained undetected through the entire village and the farm, where with a simple diversion, we were able to draw out the remaining enemies and sneak through to the windmill typewriter. The cabin was primarily a place where terminally ill gamers such as myself came when they wanted to go back to the desktop. With Luis refusing to let us dual-wield the Red 9s and then choosing to shoot at a pace that would classify as a negative RPM, making it out of here without taking damage was looking unlikely. If you weren't being trolled by Luis or hit with what in most social circles is classed as an illegal move. The reanimated corpses of my would-be victims quickly cornered us upstairs, ensuring that I never left here alive. After so many resets that I'd forgotten what it was like to be in a different part of the game, I'd rediscovered the loop around the cabin that had served me so well in the Berserker mod, and it had again come in clutch here. With dodges that would have had Morpheus gasping for air and split-second parries that even had the Ganados questioning their reality, we'd been in the middle of knocking down ladders like we were defending Helm's Deep when Ashley broke down the door, becoming the unlikely hero of Chapter 5. Arriving in the looming shadow of the mountain checkpoint, we now faced a series of checkpoints that would need to be passed through if we wanted to gain access to Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Bullshit. The first of 4 challenges would start with the ambush in the valley. With these 2 scouts given an extra hole to breathe out of, we watch on as this Ganado patrolling with his eyes closed stepped into his own trap. By gaining some early momentum, Ashley sticks much closer to us, and with her earliest possible kidnapper currently trying to put his tibia back into place, we can run straight through to the door to the checkpoint where, once open, this imaginary line here causes everyone behind us to drop chase. Arriving at the checkpoint, Bella apparently is a colloquial word in Spanish that means beautiful. Evidently, there was still a large language barrier here, but the sisters, the checkpoint, and the resizing of our rectums to chainsaw size were in fact only the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th biggest concerns here. The first was that we were running out of ammo. Post-cabin, ammunition stock had unexpectedly reached previously uncharted lows, and with several key moments on the very immediate horizon, it was time to begin bullet rationing. With handgun ammo now a protected species, getting through the checkpoint fell to the rapid oxidation of a material in the exothermic chemical process of combustion, commonly referred to as. Like our favourite Targaryen, I was bowed, bent over and broken, but fire would be our unlikely ticket to avoiding a softlock in the chapter finale. By using our Molotov-wielding friend here and the various hanging torches in the arena, the sisters and their supporting forces were gathered up and firebombed, providing us with some much-needed breathing room. Even after our new friend's performance became lackluster, the damage had already been done, and by sedating the sisters back at the checkpoint's AI borders, we gave them both a reason to continue wearing those bandages. The reset line here also has a second benefit, however. With the checkpoint crank now in hand, the remaining forces around the door were also reset back to their original positions as well, meaning that after we'd collected some additional ammo from the valley, we could re-enter the checkpoint and open the door without ever being detected. En route through to the castle, the ongoing custody battle over our infant parasite turns ugly, and Mendez remained wholly unimpressed by the new hole that we'd made in his jacket. Questions remained unanswered about how practical Las Plagas really was from a day-to-day perspective. From what we'd seen so far, these mutations just seemed wildly inconvenient. With the King of Cheese bearing down on us, Mendez would soon come to learn the 2 L's of crackhead challenge running. In Resident Evil and many other quadruple A games, ladders can help to provide the perfect ad break to intense boss fights. For us and our distinctly average weaponry, it meant that we couldn't just hold our ground and freestyle fights like this. In the absence of more powerful weaponry, it turned boss fights into a marathon, not a sprint, meaning we'd need a safe and reliable pattern we could follow that would not only prevent Mendez from choking us out, but give us time to issue out damage. And it just so happens that this arena gave us both. By running straight up to the ladder to the floor above, Mendez and his attacks here were both easily dodged and provided more than enough time for us to begin reducing his health. Once we'd run out of room here, we'd wait for an attack before jumping down to the ground floor, where his cooldown gave us more than enough time to make it back to the ladder safely, climb up and repeat. Admittedly, cheesing the big cheese in such a cheesy way felt somewhat illegal, but it also requires a level of patience and discipline that meant I wasn't just a complete sellout. And with Mendez, only my second hated big cheese next to Stilton now turning into fondue on the floor, we arrived to start the castle with the Trifecta challenge still alive. For now. It was clear that Los Illuminados had set the groundwork to begin removing the separation between church and state, so it was up to us to drive a wedge back between them. The religious intolerance as we fought through the castle battlements was high, but so was my intolerance of the religious. Reaching the cannon, the game apparently believes this to just be an exceptionally large flintlock pistol, so doesn't fail us on the minimalist for using it. So you better believe that I made the most out of this rare boost in firepower.
Happens to be quite the ladies' man.
Such a pleasure to finally make your acquaintance.
You vulgar, utterly uncivil! It's open. Go!
Having enraged this small Victorian child by interrupting his dinner party, we're chased from the main hall down into the dungeons below to escape the castle's bodyguards. Thinking the Garrador could present a challenge, by the end of our encounter, I'd say he was lucky he was blind. With the way he was deleted from existence, I wouldn't want to have eyes to see how badly I got embarrassed either.
Not seen anything you like, stranger.
Entering the water hall, this place always seemed to make me feel better about life. If things weren't going well, just remember, at least you're not here. As expected, the vein in my forehead was bulging more than David Bowie's pants in Labyrinth as the resets began to flow like wine, and Ashley, right on cue, was becoming more annoying with every additional breath she took. This one was not sparking joy. The de-aggro line back at the save room, however, was helping to de-escalate the tension here somewhat, but just as the feeling of wanting to put my fist through my monitor had begun to dissipate, the one sound nobody on a pistol-only run wants to hear. The undeniable truth of this challenge was that as we progressed through the game, the enemies all grew exponentially to match the game's difficulty curve, increasing in both health and how fucking annoying they were. But for us, without the merchant's upgrades, our guns wouldn't scale to match that curve, meaning that ammo requirements would only continue to increase from here on out. With Ashley still needing to be protected as she lowered both platforms with no ammo, the run was effectively over. However, in an act of defiance, instead of surrendering the challenge, I decided that if my guns weren't going to scale with the difficulty, then I was just going to force my ammo to scale instead. Throughout the world of Resident Evil 4 are item drops available from crates, vases, barrels, and enemies, which for the most part were RNG. But it wasn't complete random, and there is actually an undoubted logic to how these drops work. So to demonstrate this, let's take two hypothetical inventories, one that has ammo, plenty of resources, and lots of health, and one that does not. Opening this specific crate 20 times, the player who has the stacked inventory receives pesetas 90% of the time, whereas comparatively, the player with nothing gets herbs, ammo, or resources 85% of the time, proving that there is a degree of influence we can exert on these drops. These RNG crates, prior to being opened, conduct an assessment of our inventory, modifying the item drop rate percentage from their matrix in line with what we have, or more importantly, what we don't have. And that is what we were now going to be abusing the shit out of. In these situations where I had 0 bullets in my inventory, with that same logic applied, crates now prioritize dropping me ammo until we're sufficiently stocked up. However, the critical trick to this process was to not pick the ammo up. By leaving that ammo on the floor and moving to the next crate to do the same, the game still thinks we're a broke bitch and drops me more ammo. And if you'd fought ahead and left every single crate in the castle untouched like me, then, well, you can see where this is going. Now, there is a limitation to this method. Venturing too far off into the level will trigger an invisible threshold that despawns any loose loot on the ground. But being the neurodivergent gamer that I was, I'd already worked out where each of these points were, meaning I could return to each designated area whenever I needed an ammo restock to help keep the fires of this challenge burning. Returning to the waterhole with an ammo refresh now came the more important question of how to use that ammo. Speed is usually of the essence in the waterhole and indeed so many other fights throughout the game, but with damage effectively in a recession and reloading taking 2 to 4 business days, we could often find ourselves being overrun, or if we were lucky, losing Ashley. With the first 4 enemies down, more reinforcements begin flooding the arena. Some continued their attempts to grab Ashley, whilst others arrived on my floor to forcibly traumatize me with blunt force. Runner 1 more often than not can be taken care of with the help of peripheral vision, but Runner 2 always made it to Ashley. Her interruption was inevitable, but if she was rescued quickly enough, it wasn't a game ender. The truth was that after this point it was up to the gods if we could make it out of here damageless, up to Ashley if she could crank quickly enough before being rugby tackled off the lever, and up to me if I just couldn't face this shit anymore. On attempt 36, with Ashley abducted early, it looked like we were heading for that same result, apart from the fact that she'd somehow managed to crank the platform up. Attempting to slip through the zealot wall forming up in front of us, the game offered mercy at a pivotal time, allowing us to make it to the bridge unscathed. With Ashley seconds away from disappearing forever, it was now or never.
Take the bloody shot!
Yeah, that's not helping, Judy, thank you. Against all odds and crosshair bloom, we'd rescued this attempt from the jaws of defeat. And with me hitting this area here, all the enemies in the waterhole go docile, allowing Ashley to run through to us without so much as a dirty look in her direction. With Ashley's confidence from the waterhole making her think that she could take on her own minimalist challenge, things went from bad to worse as we... Sorry, 2 seconds. Hello?
What a performance!
Entering the Red Zealot's prayer room, we're greeted with a noise that I can only assume is what cancer sounded like. Going loud here was a fast-track way to dying, repeatedly, so instead it was time to once again dust off the bald cap. The first task for Phil Mitchell, Master Assassin, was to take out this Ian Beale on the left, by shooting him. This sounds like the opposite of stealth, but for reasons unknown, instead of, I don't know, asking any questions, his colleagues simply refused to believe that this guy had been shot, instead continuing to just send intense thoughts and prayers. Avoiding the patrols downstairs, we move up to remove any wandering eyes from the balcony. With the Overwatch removed, we can move up behind this zealot to convert his Adam's apple into a Mary pineapple, and with everyone else in the room legally blind and deaf, nobody moved a muscle as the Red Zealot mumbles his final glorious plagas.
Excellent work, 47. The leader has been eliminated. Return to the safe house. Collect yourself. I'll be in touch.
Masking our escape with theatricality and deception, our spate of religious hate crimes was now complete, but one challenge was now in peril.
Right. How about we continue this discussion another time?
With November's Platinum Trophy now delayed until next year, and our sleep paralysis demon becoming our awake vigor demon, we skip through the castle's waiting entourage using the door skip and are given a warm, stone-filled greeting by... With armoured Harambe doing most of the work for us, our perilous run across the battlements to the cannon allows us to preserve this timeline's integrity. And with Ashley found, she's asked to politely not fucking stab me again please, as we prepare to enter the maze. Being an ex-cop, Leon's experience at dealing with beloved family pets was his speciality, and with a quick ammo replenish in the maze, all 3 flags were lowered to open our way through to the Grand Hall. With 3 puzzle pieces required to unlock the path through to Chapter 10, we hit what I thought would be the hardest of the 3 rooms first. And oh how wrong I was. That was easy. I'm assuming fighting through Golden Knights, Garradors and other horrors down here on the Berserker mod is what made this feel so easy, but managing to retrieve the Lion's Head first try just felt satisfying. Weirdly enough, it was the Goat's Head room that took the mantle of room most likely to make me auto-asphyxiate. With no way to prevent us from being dropped down into the hell below, we'd be forced to fight our way through the entirety of Pueblo's sex offender registry, whilst also tanking my 118th epileptic fit of the run. It was clear that if you loved what you did, you'd never glory a las plagas a day in your life, but this whole philosophy was proving rather inconvenient for both me and Ashley.
Ashley! Fuck, not good.
One quick reset to reconstruct Ashley's entire face, and you can actually subdue Mr. Songs of Praise over here by just shooting him in the middle of his charm. Heckling him like this prevents him from ever exposing any plagas from the foot soldiers on the ground with us, helping to severely reduce the amount of aids that this section could provide. With Ashley used as bait to set up some insta-kills, we make quick work of the remaining forces in the Goat's Head room to complete the puzzle and begin Chapter 10. With the merchant's attempts to force us to engage in business with him becoming more unhinged and aggressive, Ashley heads down into the crypts below the castle where she belonged, whilst we began tackling the ballroom. With all the charm of a crack den, the ballroom's contents were repelled by the Red 9, which for once actually felt like it was doing something. Retreating back to either of these doors, we made sure that the Novies never overwhelmed us, and as we opened the main doors in search of the throne room, all we found was the annual meeting of the world's biggest dickheads. As anticipated, the Garrador trap room was more than qualified to emancipate me from life. My experience in this room felt like I had a constant malevolent voice whispering in my ear that I should smash my keyboard. It would need to be resisted as much as possible. Unable to discharge a firearm in here without being forcibly put onto life support, our constant resets proved very quickly that there were some fates worse than death. Oh my god, I'm so sick of this run. Oh my god. There really was only so many times you could open a brown door and run through a ballroom only to just immediately be punched in the face and have to do this all over again before you begin to go clinically insane.
Why are we still here?
Carelessness was the #1 cause of death in this room. The Garradors moved in mysterious ways known only to the gods, and every noise we made was a hypothetical throw of the dice of fate. Would we be left untouched, or would we have our eyes pushed out the back of our asshole? Well, the complete randomness of this room was what made it so fun. I'm just kidding, this place fucking sucked. But there were 2 things I could leverage that the Garradors would never see coming. Literally. The first was tap shift. By tapping, not holding shift, we were able to gain a speed boost that kept us undetected by the Garradors' overly sensitive hearing. Alongside that, I'd also learned how to turn the Garradors into my own personal predator missiles. If anything was unfortunate enough to find itself between me and a Garrador as they were rampaging towards me with murderous intent, they'd receive a gentle tap on the shoulder to tell them that they were out of the game. With this knowledge, at the right moment, shooting could help to get me out of tight spots or send Garradors in to do my bidding for me, and whilst it made it seem like this was a simple game of cat and mouse, the Garradors were more like velociraptors. They were clever girls, and they didn't obey the rules of game development. If it weren't for dodging underneath the Garradors by a matter of frames or parrying their attacks at critical moments, then we may have just found ourselves walking through the ballroom forever. But finally, on attempt 28, the Garradors had taken out every single zealot for me, leaving just the 3 of us, and after what was the most intense war of attrition I'd ever taken part in, the Garradors were finally laid to rest in what I assume was a continuation of their current darkness. In the throne room, arriving to watch Ashley get waterboarded for Madonna's entertainment was disturbing, even for someone who hated Ashley as much as me. But the castle was apparently exempt from human rights, and after being demoted to the basement to crawl through the castle's morning shits, we managed to find our way back to the surface. Arriving to fight Verdugo, his biggest weakness was nitrogen, but if that failed, we could just drown him from the absolutely illegal amounts of drip we were saturating this area with. With Temu Predator frozen long enough to crank our way out of the power room, his second, lesser-known weakness was a mild jogging pace. By making sure we'd unlocked this door, we created the perfect loop to drag Verdugo around until the lift arrived to take us up to the mines. Any feelings of wanting to soil myself quickly evaporated after a few minutes as it became very apparent that we were just fast enough to outrange any attack. Taking a hit of Luis's vape, he tells us that we were running out of time. The parasite that Mendes had inserted inside us would continue to grow until it took over our body completely, turning us into a mindless vassal of Lord Sadler. With Luis now joining us on the merry-go-round of misery and suffering, it was made clear that chainsawing the parasite out of us wasn't an option, meaning that we were now against the clock to ensure we didn't turn into Plaga Palpatine. To clear the cave-in up ahead, we'd need to collect some dynamite, which was currently being protected by a coalition of the widows we'd made back in the village. Collection of the dynamite was made easy by the mine's strict enforcement of its one-way traffic code, and our El Gigante sequel was for once one that I actually welcomed. With the control panel for the lava grate returned from its Berserker mod hiatus, all we needed to do was get both of the big guys down just once before plunging them down into Gollum's swimming pool. Once on the minecart, it was evident that the new Indiana Jones film blowed. But once on the other side, to alleviate the stress of our predicament, Luis proposes getting some acupuncture, to release some tension. Los Illuminados' answer to Andrew Tate proclaimed that he himself was the master of the minimalist challenge, believing that relying on the comfort of a turtleneck, clothing, or even underwear was what beta Pretty Boy Cucks did. With both of us oiled up and two sets of nipples now in mortal danger, this fight really had zero room for any mistakes. A simple misstep, one missed parry, reacting 1 second too late, and we'd be able to apply for a disabled parking badge. After learning his moveset and discovering that I could in fact reach the speed of light when smashing F to break out of his hold attack, Krauser had nothing left to best us with, and in one fell swoop, Krauser's left nipple was sliced clean off, forcing him to retreat and drawing an end to the first round of playtime. As the world became crueler and more Luisless with every passing second, Luis asked us to pass his lighter for one final smoke.
What do you think, Leon? People can change, right?
Oh, no.
Still wondering how Luis's death would affect LeBron's legacy, we're welcomed again by local clock tower enthusiast and resident masturbator, Salazar, as we begin Chapter 12. Every narcissist's dream was to have a fully functioning flamethrower head of themselves, and Salazar was no different, but it was surprisingly useful at doing the majority of the work for us here. With the rest of the clock tower crushed for our second Indiana Jones sequence of the video, now came a crucial moment. This was now the point of no return. Once the lift had been taken up, there was no way of coming back down, and with a huge amount of crates I'd left throughout the castle that still needed to be open, I decided to make a quick detour. After the waterhall haul, we were now fully stacked with bullets, meaning our drop rates for handgun ammo had now plummeted. Now, our RE4's game engine liked to believe it was now in control of what our remaining drops would be, but to that, I say no. The RE engine was about to be humbled down to its very core. My plan was to now make a save before opening every remaining crate, with the intention being to maximize small resources and bonus handgun ammo from the drop percentage. If I didn't like what was being offered to me like the world's biggest Karen, I would reload my save until I got something I did want. Really, the only limit to how long this could go on for is just how patient you are, and lucky for us, my levels of patience would be deemed extremist. With the game dominated into providing me with the goods, the hope now was that I had enough ammo to make up the tower and through to the finale without getting softlocked. So as we arrived back at the clock tower with 316 bullets. Wait, 316 bullets? Jesus fucking Christ. I'd maybe gone a little too hard with the ammo collection, but with enough handgun ammo to single-handedly fight the Taliban for the next 2 years, we could turn our attention to the long ride up to the summit of the clock tower. Now, like most mainstream depictions, I'd always been under the impression that to get to hell, you needed to go downwards, but apparently hell was also accessible by going up this lift. The irony of calling this place the point of no return was not lost on me, as it appeared that we were going to be returning more than we were leaving. This entire segment relies on us being able to repel invaders from landing on the lift with us, a feat that seemed almost impossible with guns that had the damage equivalent of erectile dysfunction. With zealots dropping reverse somersaults into the pike position onto the lift from all angles, the lift would inevitably stop, leaving us exposed for more enemies to flood the small platform. With the second red zealot then compounding this misery with the Linguini special, no matter what I seemed to do here, nothing was getting me any further to the top. Even when we somehow made it within touching distance of the summit, there was one man who remained, whose sole purpose was to shit on my parade. My reset counter was proving that the route through that second phase was not one that could just be brute forced. Something had to give, and it very well could be me. Having already mastered the ability to run up the clock tower 16 times, I chose instead to focus on mastering the lift, spending 30 minutes simply riding up it, understanding every possible action and outcome that took place in that section. Every spawn, every movement that was made was studied so I could better understand how I could make it out of here. And it was here that we discovered some key moments that would help to end this vertically moving nightmare. When the second red zealot greets us, I'd always immediately shot him because I like my games without tinnitus, but this was a mistake. Shooting early causes him to move immediately to his secondary position over here, which first of all causes more problems than it solves, but more so, we needed him to move there later. Against my brain's tolerance for in-game electric shock therapy, we allowed him to continue to glory Alice Plagas at will as we turned our attention to the zealots flooding into the area. This first one to our left makes a beeline straight for the ladder leading to the top platform. With him clotheslined back to the ground floor, 3 new zealots spawn in, 1 to each of our left and right, and 1 in front of us. Despite this red barrel taking 1 of the 3 out, this still left 2 zealots preparing to board. Unless we wanted Plaga brains all over the lift, we couldn't let this happen, and my favourite strategy I'd found to remove them both quickly was timing them to jump onto the lift together, which is where we'd blow the red barrel underneath them. The force of the shockwave produced by the barrel knocks them both face first onto the lift, giving us the perfect opportunity for an insta-kill cleanup. With the hardest segment now over, there was still no time to rest. With new enemies now climbing the towers around us, the dreaded shield guy arrives, and this, coincidentally, was the critical moment that we'd been waiting for with the red zealot. When he takes damage from this barrel, he'll now move to his secondary location, meaning he stops his Plaga chant. For us, that means that when the shield guy lands next to us, he isn't immediately compelled to convert into a Plaga and provides just enough time to remove him from the lift. With 2 more ladies of the night arriving, the red guy is still moving into position downstairs, so Plaga production was on hold, and before I'd even realised it. Now, whilst I wouldn't say that Salazar was easy, and I won't pretend that I didn't die 19 times, because I did, there was something here that Salazar couldn't kill. Meet the pillar. A tall vertical structure comprised of stone and ancient history. Its primary use is as a support for a building. Its secondary use is as a support for my mental health. Salazar's attack pattern was varied but easy to learn, and insanely, the pillar kept us safe from almost all of them. All of Salazar's spray attacks fell on the pillar like they were made out of water. The insta-kill attacks were easily blocked, and it even came with a small makeshift roof that kept us safe from when Salazar turned himself into a garden hose. Really, the only 2 things that it couldn't protect us from were my own incompetence and the exploding diarrhea mines that Salazar was laying about the place. Our position under the pillar completely avoids his main egg-laying cycle, but being the stage 4 malignant tumour that he was, Salazar can sporadically lay eggs underneath our feet as he moved around or attacked us. The only real counter to this was to pray to Jesus that there wasn't one inserted inside of me. Bullets were our only other concern here. With 250 left over from the lift, it's worrying just how quickly that number can vanish. To maximise ammo efficiency, it was key to prioritise hitting Salazar's actual body, which did 3 times more damage than shooting the gooey Plaga foreskin that he was encased in, as well as ensuring we hit every possible knife prompt. And if somehow you could do this and still manage to hold your nerve for 41 minutes and 39 seconds, applying some victory lip rouge on the way down the lift, our attempts to end the challenge early are blocked by game design, forcing us to reluctantly catch a lift with the bitch in the red turtleneck.
See you later.
Arriving at the island, you wouldn't find a more wretched hive of scum and villainy in the entirety of Spain. With spotlights, sentries, and patrols everywhere, gaining access to the island's inner sanctum without detection seemed improbable, but never forget the power of a recurring joke. Despite the unnerving setup here, you can in fact stealth this entire starting outpost. If you can somehow overcome the brain damage caused by trying to shoot targets at a distance through a magnitude 5 earthquake, except the earthquake is only happening in your crosshair, then you can begin taking out the spotlights and crossbow granados guarding the main door from far outside their alert radius. With the remaining guards simply chalking down their colleague's spontaneous death to nature, we could enter the outpost undetected, taking each of the guards out one by one. Once through the island's heavily guarded entrance, we locate the control room, finding Ashley's holding cell, which needed a keycard to open it. Running through the lab, I didn't know whether to be scared, or horny, or scared of being horny. Oh my god! Now, the retrieval of the wrench from this anal bead Easter egg would need to be split into two parts. First was to find the culprit who had the wrench, which we triangulated to this guy. With our previous save reloaded and spent ammo revived, our lack of thermal imaging meant that plugger location would be impossible. At least it would have been had I not noted down exactly where each of the pluggers were when I'd originally been searching for the wrench. With ammo saved, the keycard upgrading, and our safety save prior to starting this room turning out to be a wise investment. Our movement through the lab as we waited for the keycard to update was as majestic as it was jarring, but with the keycard swiped, we make a break for Ashley, and unlocking her from her prison cell, we could finally make it into chapter. Hey, you do know I can hear you up there, Ada? With Ashley now back on the team, it was time to tackle the longest chapter in the history of chapters. One time saver I'd found in the furnace was to stick Ashley on the lever, run down to this door, but to not unlock it. Instead, with the enemies now spawned in, we can run back up to this platform to shoot Ashley free from her scripted abduction before running immediately through to the next area. Arriving here completely de-aggroes the entire furnace area, but with the door still locked, Ashley's AI is stuck and can't move, preventing her from running into the arms of any waiting enemies. Returning to unlock the door, nobody in the furnace area spots us, meaning they remain completely docile, allowing Ashley to run past them with ease. The same principle then applies to the new enemies that spawn in this connecting corridor after the door is unlocked, leaving us to just wait patiently for Ashley to join us. The price of this strategy, however, was that we have no typewriter between here and my arch nemesis, with failure sending us back to the start of the chapter. As a man with over 600 hours in this game, it was surely time for me to outgrow my inability to operate this puzzle. This was no longer a joke, this was a serious matter that required all of my attention and focus. On this occasion, reviewing the footage, VAR confirmed that it was in fact Ashley who had missed her switch, not me. So feeling somewhat better about myself, we make it through the door on our second attempt, Jesus fucking Christ, power on the garbage disposal area and arrive at what was shaping up to be the perfect storm of bullshit. Without any explosives or RPGs to weaken the wall, its destruction would now rest entirely on Ashley's shoulders, which by law I'm legally required to tell you all was a massive stinky bin of shit. Time being of the essence was so far a concept that Ashley had failed to comprehend. The longer she took to clear the wall, the higher my chances were of being GBH'd, turned into rain, or 360 no-scoped in the face by an axe, which, whilst the odds of that last one happening were low, they were never zero. My loop around the bulldozer made life in this active war zone somewhat manageable. And I say somewhat because even when we weren't having our spine readjusted, Ashley seemed to be operating the bulldozer as if she'd had her eyes sewn shut. I fucking hate it here. 27 resets later and my usual rock-solid patience had hit an unprecedented wall. I was usually unmovable when it came to this kind of trash, but even I was beginning to feel the mounting stress this challenge was providing. But conveniently, whilst we're on the topic of walls, something had occurred to me. My thought process had always been that the wall, being made of concrete, was susceptible to grenades and rocket launchers because of science. But it had never occurred to me that maybe the reason these items do damage to the wall in the first place isn't because it had anything to do with the laws of physics, but more to do with the fact that the wall has a health bar. While shooting at the wall with the SG or the Red 9 doesn't appear to do any damage to it, after persistent shots you can see that the structure of the wall begins to change. As a last-ditch test, I began shooting the wall right from the start of the segment, hoping and praying it was doing something to remove our reliance on Ashley here, and unbelievably, the wall had gone down in under 2 minutes, so quick in fact that half the enemies hadn't even had time to spawn in yet, and having only cost us 30 bullets, it was certainly great value for caliber. Once up the lift, the leader of the cult escorts the Ashley Garrador off to the Neverland Ranch, whilst we stop by the camp to collect some resources and catch up with our messages.
Yo, 148, 3 to the 3 to the 6 to the 9, representing the ABQ. What up, biatch? Leave it at the tone.
Man needs a break every once in a while, am I right?
Now they say whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Well, it just so happens that what was about to kill me in this next section was also going to give me full-blown arse cancer. Krauser would prove to be one of the toughest challenges we'd faced in channel history. Unable to escape the trap he'd set for us meant that we'd get no shortcut to the second arena, forced instead to have Krauser make me stare directly into the sun. To help accelerate this section, if timed correctly, we could shoot the explosive-tipped arrows to immediately remove a large portion of Krauser's health. If timed incorrectly, then we'd be turning this place into a hemoglobin Jackson Pollock painting. With Krauser repelled and this box keeping us safe from being touched inappropriately downstairs, so long as we maintained an IQ of over 25, the remainder of the ruins were easily bypassed. However, the second fight with Krauser comes with its own set of problems. There were no typewriters. The distinct omission of ink and paper to hold our digital memoirs meant that any time we'd fail, we'd have to repeat all of this from the beginning. Krauser's insistence on doing anything to make me, a pretty boy, feel special was less than comforting and had become particularly grating as we continued to die to some of the most discriminate bullshit known to man. Even forced to use Krauser's own knives against him just to keep us in the fight, we eventually use a combo of headshots, jujitsu, parries and explosives to scrape our way through to the final fight. Our obvious unhappiness at the situation had given Krauser a forearm erection, and with the finale set up, the pressure to put this chapter behind us for good was palpable. So palpable, in fact, that it could make you choke.
Are you ready, rookie? Yeah, let's settle this.
No matter how many times I returned to this circled arena of hell, I received the same disappointing, soft-penised result. No matter the move, no matter the plan, Krauser had counters to everything that we did. After repeating this 5 times, I was fast-tracked to that stage in a challenge where you question what you were doing with your life. I'm not gonna lie, I'm really unhappy about that. As I continued to throw attempt after attempt, the only thing that remained more rock solid than Krauser right now was my refusal to quit. To rise out of this depression recession, we needed to expand our thinking. It was clear that the win condition rested with the 2 ladders in the arena, but by themselves, they were useless. What we also needed was a supplemental loop, but with such a limited arena, Krauser appeared to have an answer for every move that we made. His relentless pursuit of us gave us no room to work with, and any attempts to jump back down to the ground floor could be met with an RNG slam attack. This attack was a lose-lose. Not dodging it was guaranteed damage, but dodging it left you exposed to his rapid follow-up attacks. Climbing the ladder to escape wasn't an option, and neither was trying to dodge him around the arena. We didn't have the knives or the Adderall to be able to block his attacks consecutively, so really, our only remaining option to build a successful loop was to find a way to neutralize that jump attack. After hours of testing that significantly depreciated my quality of life, it had all still been worth it. I'd finally found a way out of here. After we jumped down from the upper platforms, by positioning ourselves here and aiming at these exact spots, when the QTE was hit, we would roll forward perfectly onto the ladder. By smashing F to climb, by the time Krauser could turn around to hit us, we were already running to the opposite side of the platform. Doing this, we'd made enough distance that we could turn and shoot Krauser's exposed kneecaps before running, jumping off and starting the whole process off again. With audio and visual cues helping us to make the right choices to avoid being pile-drived off the ladder, the God Loop had finally been perfected. We were now one step ahead of Krauser at all times, and even though damage was limited, my patience was not. Sure, Krauser could decide at any given moment to just be a complete dickhead, or Leon could just throw himself off the top floor, but the chasm that had previously been between us and Chapter 15 was getting smaller by the minute. Unlike the bloom for the Red 9, which was now the size of the fucking known universe, but regardless, it was still doing its job, and after not blinking for 27 minutes in what was the most tense, focused fight of my professional gaming career, having turned the music and voice audios down to listen for sound cues, this sequence between Leon and Krauser felt quite uncomfortable. But Krauser did have something to tell us with his dying breath.
You missed the typewriter downstairs, dumbass!
What? Further investigation indicated that I wasn't the only one to be bamboozled by this unwanted Easter egg, but anyways, no use crying over spilled blood, tears and 2.5 hours of wasted time. It was still over, and Chapter 15 was finally here. As Mike arrived to issue out democracy-free democracy to the military base, we used the turrets scattered around the area, which were also exempt from the minimalist rules for some reason, to clear out the stragglers that he'd missed. With the AA gun chasing Mike away, we were back solo again, and whilst without grenades, you may think that we'd need to make that long trip upstairs to disable the turret. Well, yes, you would be correct, but I had, in the middle of all this, found another way to take the AA gun out of commission. Whilst some cutscenes can embellish the in-game reality, this one actually tells the truth. There is indeed a real person operating the AA gun. You can only see him for a few frames and only from here, but you can actually shoot him to disable the AA gun. Admittedly, costing 70 bullets from a gun that was 98% blue made this a torture I wouldn't wish on anybody but Ashley, but maybe for a different run, it might have potential. Forced to take the manual way up instead, we make use of some efficient decision-making and strategic saves to grind down the defending forces until the gunner was destroyed. With Mike now ghosting us, the work to get to the Citadel was up to us again. Whilst I felt conflicted about using machine guns to mow down unsuspecting victims, I'd come to the conclusion that it wasn't my fault that the game's definition of only knives and pistols was dyslexic. With both sets of locks released, 400 saves made to mentally break the game and to give me what I wanted, we watch on as Mike tries to park the helicopter. With his pilot's license evidently issued from the San Andreas School of Flying, the Novies were neutralized and the Regenerador birthing pool remained undisturbed as we arrived outside the Citadel. Moments away from completing this challenge, it was now time to show you all why we had kept our health untouched throughout this entire challenge. If my calculations were correct, by completing the turret skipped here, the closest Novi would push us through the turret's laser grid, helping to save us time, effort, and importantly, ammo to give us the best possible chance at beating Sadler. Unfortunately for all of us involved, it turned out that I was terrible at maths. I evidently forgot that the damage reduction that we get from the body armor wasn't available to us, because I can't buy it. So instead of pushing us through with a reasonable amount of health remaining, we were put through on 1 HP. An impossible trade-off that left our plans in tatters. It seemed that clearing out the Citadel was no longer optional. It was a requirement. So to start, we cleared out the Vanguard before using my favourite pastime of friendly fire to blow JJ up without having to spend a single of my own bullets. With our new friends piling out of the buildings ahead, we walked them through their own traps before dealing with a secondary battalion of Novies. And we've had one JJ, yes, but what about second JJ? Well, with his reincarnated body dragged out of his hiding spot and laid to rest in what must have felt like the weirdest case of deja vu, the remaining red barrels helped to evaporate whatever new spawns of enemies remained before disabling the turret to finally, against all conceivable odds, arrive at the Citadel. Rare and unfortunate complications during the deworming process had left Ashley with semi-permanent side effects, but for us, all that mattered now was getting revenge on the man who'd put those eggs inside of us. Now, was it believable that we could beat Sadler with the same garbage we found 15 chapters ago? Well, maybe. Was it believable that Leon hit Ada's rope at that distance in one shot? Absolutely not. Now, the main problem with Sadler was that halfway through the fight, he decides to completely destroy half the arena, rendering any pre-planned loop completely irrelevant. Without an effective way around the arena, the fight likely would have been insurmountable, had we not just fought Krauser. As they had always been, the same rules of L and L were applicable here. After starting the fight and quickly jumping off the platform, we would use this tiny little area to keep Sadler locked in a consistent pattern in the same way we'd done for Krauser. Once off the elevated platform, we keep as tight as we can to the railing until we jump up to the bridge here. With Sadler in pursuit, these small moments here before he jumped up to our level would be where we would get our damage in. Once his front legs moved inwards as he prepared to jump, that's where we'd sprint immediately to the ladder and back up to the elevated platform. Running straight back up to here meant that when Sadler lands back behind us, his AI now focuses on wanting to jump up onto our level, which removed all of his potentially game-ending attacks. With another cycle of damage available to us, we wait for the right cue before jumping back down and repeating the same cycle again. As we said time and time again, this was a marathon, and any attempts to deviate or greed for more damage would leave you exposed, and with such a small health pool, there was a high chance of just being insta-killed. But the loop was simple, mind-numbingly boring for sure, but if followed, it was very effective. So effective, in fact, that it even accommodates the two exceptions to Sadler's pattern. Twice in the fight, Sadler will jump up to this central platform, first to call in his Navistador backup and second to cover the place in black tar. Through the power of left and right, the second attack was easily dodged, and the arriving Navistadors all had 1 HP, meaning the SG's accuracy helped to accelerate their extermination from the arena. Granted, there were lots of them, but even if we didn't manage to get them all before Sadler rejoined us, if we just ran the same cycle as before, putting all damage opportunity to the Novies instead of him, we remained well protected from Sadler until they were all gone. And that was literally it. Using Krauser's knife to apply an additional damage bonus to Sadler every time he hit the floor in what felt surprisingly quick, Parasite Jesus was given the Holy Body, and it was finally done. With the completion of the local thrill ride, the Trifecta challenge was now over. All 3 of my elusive achievements popped at the same time, flooding my brain with endorphins and giving us that sweet, coveted 100% in Resident Evil 4 Remake. Proving that you can indeed beat Resident Evil 4 Remake without healing, without talking to the merchant, and with only pistols and knives. And with only a few extra saves, without ever taking damage as well. The only thing left to do now was to get home.
Well done, stranger.